This powder is actually body wash. I know it looks pretty boring right now, but when it's mixed with water, it magically transforms from a dry powder into rich, luxurious lather. That powder-to-foam sorcery is really quite impressive, but only takes about 10 minutes to make. This formulation includes 2 beautiful raw botanicals, uses easy-to-get ingredients, doesn't need a preservative, can easily be all natural, and it's a really eco-friendly sort of formulation that's inexpensive to mail, making it a great gift option for faraway friends and family. I'll show you how I did it so you can make your very own kind of magical powdery body wash, and I'll teach you a couple easy ways to customize the formula so you can really have fun with it. So what do you need, and how do you turn those ingredients into a dry powder that magically transforms into creamy, fragrant bubbles when you mix it with water? We'll get to that soon, but first you're going to need a wee bit of gear. Most of what you'll need is standard DIY stuff: a digital scale, some spoons, a pH meter or strips, and some smaller bowls to weigh ingredients into. But you're also going to need 3 specific pieces of equipment that you might not have already if you're a newer maker. To mix everything together, you're going to need a blade coffee grinder that you only use for DIYing. This is a super useful piece of gear. I promise you won't only use it for powdered cleansers. One like this is the cheapest place to start, but if you've got a bit of room in your budget, one with a removable grinding cup is a great upgrade. They're just so much easier to clean. I've linked this one in the free partner blog post. This next item is essential so you don't end up choking and gagging as you work. We're making a tiny powdery tornado in a can, and the dust will whip up will make a beeline for your nose and mouth if given the slightest opportunity. To prevent a seriously unpleasant coughing fit, you need a tight-fitting respirator. This is not a job for a cloth mask. You need something that seals very well on your face. Mine is from Lee Valley, but any hardware store should sell something similar. And then just one more thing, a pair of formulating goggles to protect your eyeballs from those floating powders. If this really isn't in your formulating budget, you can leave the lid of your coffee grinder in place for a few minutes after each time you use it to really let the powder settle, but I do recommend grabbing a pair. They're not very expensive and your eyeballs are super important. Okay, now that we look like we're going scuba diving, we can get to the making. I'm going to make a 40-gram batch, but if your grinder cup is smaller than mine, you might need to have that. We'll weigh out the dry phase first, starting with where the powder to foam magic comes from. I'm using a blend of 2 ingredients. Both are fine white powders that mix into the powdery base unseen, but then transform into beautiful bubbles when the body wash is mixed with water. You'll need 8 grams of each sodium Cocoyl isethionate and sodium Lauryl sulfoacetate. These surfactants are gentle and lovely. If you'd like the formulation to be strictly all natural, simply replace the sodium Cocoyl isethionate with more sodium Lauryl sulfoacetate, as it's considered natural, while sodium Cocoyl isethionate isn't. That said, sodium Cocoyl isethionate is beautiful and used by a lot of formulators who care a lot more about things being natural than I do. Formula Botanica, for example, uses it often, so I really do encourage you to try it out, even though it isn't strictly natural. Up next, some silky soft rice flour dilutes the surfactants a bit, sort of like water would in a liquid body wash. You'll need 13.4 grams. This next ingredient weighs about as much as a sneeze and helps keep the finished powder free-flowing. It can be a bit sneaky as its inky is just tapioca starch, but it definitely isn't just tapioca starch. This is NATRASORB Bath. It's a modified form of tapioca starch that is super duper light and fluffy and absorbs much more liquid than regular tapioca starch does. You'll need 6 grams. For reference, this is 6 grams of regular tapioca starch. You can really see how different they are. Now it's time for some herbal goodness. I'm working on a series of white and gold formulations right now for Christmas gifts. The powdery base of this formulation is white, so for the gold part, I'm using a blend of sunny calendula and chamomile. You'll need 2 grams dried calendula petals and 1.2 grams dried chamomile flowers. You can, of course, customize this formulation though by using different botanicals if you want to. Other lovely options include cranberry fiber, lavender flowers, and rosebuds. This next ingredient seems a bit weird, but it makes a big difference to the finished product. Xanthan gum. In a liquid body wash, xanthan gum would thicken the water and therefore the whole formulation. But there's no water in this dry body wash, so what on earth is a gum doing in it? Well, it's not doing anything in the dry powder, but it does do something when that powder stops being dry. When you mix this body wash with water to use it, the xanthan gum will kick in, giving a nice luxurious slip to the product. It's really neat. You'll need just 0.4 grams. That's it for our dry phase, so dump everything into your coffee grinder. Now it's time for our last two ingredients, the liquids. I know liquid ingredients seem a bit odd in a dry product, but they do work and you kind of don't really even know they're there. A bit of fractionated coconut oil helps weigh the powder down a bit so it's not super light and floaty when you use it. I recommend sticking with fractionated coconut oil or medium chain triglycerides rather than using a real oil, as this ingredient is very stable against oxidization. And lastly, something for scent. I'm using driftwood and amber fragrance oil from Brambleberry, but you can customize this formulation by using anything that strikes your fancy, including a natural fragrance oil or an essential oil. Just make sure whatever you want to use is safe at 1% in IFRA Category 9 products. Scatter these ingredients over the surface of the dry ingredients in the grinder. You'll need 0.6 grams of fractionated coconut oil and 0.4 grams of your fragrance or essential oil. Give the grinder a little wiggle to coat those drops of liquid in powder, and now it's time to grind. Put the lid on your grinding cup or a piece of plastic wrap if yours doesn't have an internal lid. Grind the mixture, stopping to stir and make sure the liquids are mixing in. While we grind, if this sort of formulation intrigues you, check out my brand new Powder-to-Foam workshop. It'll teach you how to formulate your very own powder-to-foam facial cleansers, body washes, and shampoos from the ground up. You'll learn how to formulate with ingredients you're excited about, and yes, that does include watery, wet ingredients like hydrolyzed proteins and liquid surfactants. Sign up now for instant access. You'll find the link in the description box below. Once you've got a uniform mix, it's time to test and adjust the pH. Mix 1 gram of the powder with 9 grams of water and check the pH with your meter or strips. We want it to be in the 4.5 to 5.5 range. Mine is 5.83, so the pH needs to be lowered a bit, which I'm going to do with 0.1 grams of citric acid. If the pH was too low, I'd blend in some baking soda to raise it. The pH of your cleanser could be quite different from mine if you switched up the botanicals or surfactants. After I've added the acid, the pH is 4.8, which is awesome, so now all that's left is packaging it up. Since this is a body wash, make sure you choose something that is shower safe, so no glass or paperboard. I'm going to use these little spice shaker bottles. If you're going to mail this formulation, you could package it in a zip-top plastic bag and then mail it that way, along with instructions for your recipient to transfer the powder to an empty plastic spice bottle on their end. And that's it! To use, sprinkle this body wash over a wet loofah. Work it up into a gorgeous lather and enjoy. Now, if you're looking for some more uses for these ingredients, might I suggest this shampoo bar? It's beautifully bubbly and uses quite a few of the same things. Thank you so much for watching and happy making. Bye!